Hello and welcome back, everybody, to another episode of What's Your Next, the show that helps you reinvent, rethink, and rewrite the next chapter of your life and career. I'm Stacy Riska, your lifestyle and franchise matchmaker, here to help you do what you love and love what you do. Today's episode is a special one because we're talking about something that every entrepreneur knows, but almost no one likes to admit.
Welcome to What's Your Next. This is the go-to podcast for aspiring business owners who want to get to the next level, escape the rat race, and give their middle finger to the corporate 9-to-5. If you want financial freedom, work-life balance, and the business of your dreams, you're in the right place. Dave and Stacy Riska, husband-wife franchising duo, openly share their successes, failures, and lessons learned in franchising, business ownership, and working with your spouse.
And that is mistakes. Mistakes. If you think you're going to go into business and never make a mistake, then this podcast isn't for you. You see, most owners never want to talk about them. They're embarrassed, they're gut-wrenching, and quite honestly, they suck when you're trying to work so hard to build a business. But ultimately, these mistakes, they shape us, they redirect us, and they make us better leaders. I call them war stories. And today's featured guest, he has a war chest full of these stories. So joining me today is Dave Kohl, a serial entrepreneur who's been moving and shaking and running multiple businesses for the past 30 years. And he's been gracious enough to come on the show, pull back the curtain, and share the truth, the missteps, the lessons, and the moments that impacted his businesses and made him the success he is today. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you, Stacy. Looking forward to being with you. And it's not a mistake coming on and doing this with you. So
Yeah,
just to
let's
clear anything up, yes.
That's right. Absolutely. You're going to help our audience so much because most of my audience is aspiring entrepreneurs, people thinking of going into business. But let's peel back the curtain a little bit before we dive into those, because something tells me that way back in this time machine, Dave, maybe it was a lemonade stand, a newspaper route, cutting grass. What gave you your entrepreneurial spirit to start?
Well, initially it was somewhat to be able to keep a job that I really enjoyed. And so that right there is something kind of unique these days. So, and it turned out it taught me a lot and some mistakes made along the way.
Okay, well, that's the topic of today's conversation, mistakes. Let's talk about some of the early ones that you've learned, because you've owned multiple businesses along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they can be difficult to talk about. Some of them are financial, some of them are emotional. Let's just talk in general, mistakes. Which ones do you want to pull back the curtain on first?
Yeah, I've got one that actually goes back to that very beginning that you brought up. And even before that, just by nature, I'm always the attention to detail type.
Okay.
And had always would like research things, and it goes back to even my best friends in grammar school. And we were big sports nuts, and it wouldn't be, oh, I think, my second baseman of my team's better than the second baseman of your team. It would have to be, well, mine hit 10 points better for his batting average. Yeah, but I'd get but mine hit 5 more home runs and the same amount of at bats. And I mean, we would go into that, and it kind of trained us. So always a stickler for details. And when it came time for my first ever business, I was a stickler for details, but as it turns out, not enough. So it's kind of where I learned the, okay, keep digging, keep deep diving, and not doing that cost me, but it taught me. And that's the message that I'm looking to get out. So, yeah, let me kind of share what happened. I was actually working with a weekly publication, local, and doing some writing and presenting, and I was happy with it. The owner was happy with me. And it's one of those, hey, I'd like to have this, go well. So one day, the owner, who also, this was a part-time thing for him, he was actually working for a bigger but still small newspaper group in the area, had like some community papers and different things, so they were well known. And he's like, Dave, I don't know if I'm going to be able to continue doing this publication. The demands of, my job and involved with these other publications are becoming quite a bit. Would you have any interest in taking this over? And it's like, well, there's things I like. It's running well. Let me, give it some thought. And I even went as far as to have an accounting firm look at the books. I mean, he provided the books and the information, and he had all these things, everything was in place with the printing plant and the distribution. So it was kind of taking over, even though I would pay him however many thousands of dollars it was. So it was kind of like paying to keep my job. But, I saw the value and I saw the potential. So,
I'm hearing a but.
yeah, but all right, so it's and this was done every week, and so I was actually there when they would do the layout, and then it would go on Monday nights, go to the printing plant, which was in a city about 100 miles away, for printing and distribution and all that. And so there was a driver that would come and pick that up along with a couple of the other publications. It was all kind of like laid out and put together. And by the way, this is before the internet took place. So now one wouldn't necessarily look to buy a print publication, but this was, prehistoric times. And so, anyway, it's the first week, and, I've gone through all this and the paperwork and looked at, every possible detail, or so I thought. And the driver comes in to pick up mine, what was now mine, and a couple of the other publications that were done at the same place. And so he picks up the other two and looks at mine and says, "Oh, Dave, I don't have a contract for you now." And I'm like, okay, to go to the printing plant, and I had the location of it and just, happen to knew that. So I knew like where it was going. And I'm like, okay. He says, well, I was doing this like as a favor because it's the same guy and I was taking his publications and I'm going there anyway. And he's like, well, tell you what, for $100 a week, I'll take care of it. And so my reaction was, for $100 a week, what else would you be doing? And again, this was 30 years ago when, $100 a week was, a bit more than we think of it now.
Right.
And so I'm like, well, you go ahead, I'll get it there. Because for me, for $100 a week, and I actually had hired somebody for $150 a week to help out with a bunch of the stuff because it was too much for one person and would have burned me out. So the plates and everything at that time would fit in the trunk. So I just popped it in the trunk and drove to the plant and got there at like, 11 o'clock at night or something and dropped it off, and everything was fine. And I stuck with that, figuring, okay, at that time for, $20 worth of gas, I'm saving all this money. I'm doing it. Plus I know it's getting to the plant and everything was fine. So that was, kind of part one. And then a couple of months in, it turned out, well, that wasn't the only thing that the guy was getting as a favor. And so I had a couple of other, not to go into all these details, but there were a couple of other instances of very similar. Oh, he was getting the bulk rate because they were doing other publications. So that was I hadn't looked into that. And then it was, I don't know, about 6 months or so, or between 6 months and a year in, when part of the tradition of this publication, they did like an annual photo album that they would send out as, for the subscribers and that type of thing. And so I'm at the printing plant, I guess one of the nights, and the manager was still there and might have been waiting for me. Hey, I know we're scheduled to do the annual photo thing, and then like, what type of paper do you want this on? Was the question, because for photos it needed to be like the next higher up grade of actual paper. And I'm like, well, yeah, if that's what they've done, let's go with that. Not realizing that was not under the contract for weekly publishing, was a higher grade of paper. And the next thing I know, after like I've signed the order to print, that the price was like, I think it was like $2,000 or something more. And I didn't have 2,000 or whatever the amount was. I mean, that was a financial burden. And you fast forward a few months, and basically the publication wound up going into bankruptcy.
Oh,
And so that was that. There wasn't money to pay the bills. I wasn't even in the situation to, start lending money and working. And there were some other things that were happening along the way. And so, to condense the story, that was the mistake of not looking into every contract, because had I known that the expenses would have been greater, that would have meant I couldn't afford to hire somebody, which would have meant it would have been too much work and would have meant that this was not a worthwhile investment to save a really fun job. So that was, just from the beginning. And so already being detailed oriented, that was the lesson to check into everything. When granted, that was a takeover versus a startup.
yeah.
But in doing that and in negotiations and things, that's something that's always, what would happen if you're not there, or what would happen if something falls into place. And I've probably become the other way from having gone through that, but that was my lesson.
Wow. Multiple lessons in one. What I find
Yeah.
so fascinating is you kept harboring on how you're so detail oriented and meticulous, and yet mistakes still were made, right? That
Yeah.
in right, you thought the contract was in place, you thought you were getting certain paper, like all of these situations along the way. So I'm curious, what just in this one business and story that you have, like what was your mindset? Were you just like, I'm done, I'm never doing this again, like this was the biggest mistake of my life? Or were you like, I'm just plowing through? Like, talk about your mindset when that happened.
Yeah, when that happened, it was because it was the what I call the double whammy, because it was not only, okay, I'm losing the publication and it's going bankrupt, but then I was also losing my income.
Oh, yeah.
And so, as this goes, and now this fits in with the entrepreneur thing, I actually wound up moving in with my parents
Uh-huh.
for a while, back in, and getting getting a couple of part-time jobs,
Okay.
and just working to at least get caught up financially. And as it happened, a former being in touch with a former coworker actually led to the next venture that I started. And in fact, that venture had nothing to do with real estate.
Okay.
And as part of that work, got a project that did involve marketing for real estate. And that actually started all this, because for most of the past 30 years, that's actually been my emphasis.
Okay.
So, but it was actually this coworker that knew of a business opportunity. and knew that I had experience in that. And what started out as an innocent, hey, Dave, you used to work at such and such. Yeah. Hey, there's an opportunity. And the next thing we know, in talking and talking and talking months later, that wound up being my next. The offer was to come and manage this business and be involved. And then it was a situation where one of the partners basically screwed over two of us by not doing everything he was supposed to do, cost us significant revenue. And talk about learning from mistakes. It's, I should have gotten more a written guarantee on that part of the revenue. But since that person that kind of screwed a couple of us over, and he's like, oh no, I don't have to pay you, this wasn't finalized and all that. And I said, okay. And what he didn't know is I was already talking with a couple of other clients that would have been good to add on to this venture. So since he was saying there's nothing in writing and he didn't have to pay me, I wound up securing them and another client with a partner on our own to recoup the revenue. We rented office space in the same building, and that led to me making even more money from that and then adding on clients than I would have made had the original deal come through. So it all relates, and that's, so again, the mistake was not getting it in writing about this contract that would have pushed things over the top. But the rebound there was okay, taking clients right back that would have gone to him and making it turn out even better.
You turn lemons into lemonade, right?
Yeah, when possible, but yeah, it's finding the recipe for lemonade. But it was looking at it, and I think part of that and how these stories relate to me, even though they don't, as far as from a business or work standpoint, was the attention to detail. Because
Yeah.
now, just like the delivery guy bringing the newspapers, and whoops, now sorry, Dave, I don't have a contract with you.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward the couple years later
Mm-hmm.
to this guy, oh, nope, contract didn't go through. I don't have to pay you. There's nothing in writing. And okay, I've got something in writing that, oh, make the check out to this company. And they didn't know the difference. So that was kind of I got to, in a way, got to do that in reverse, not intentionally, but I still wonder, and this is, more than 25 years ago, if I would have had the wherewithal to do that, to take those clients and take them for myself,
Hmm.
if it hadn't been for that experience of, oh, Dave, we don't have a contract. So now I turned that around and, did the same thing. So it's kind of like when somebody, working for other people, you get to promoted to manager, and now you're going to do those things that were done to you if they're positive, So I looked at it as kind of taking that from the learning experience.
Well, I'm a parent, and when you're raising kids, you kind of take your past experiences to do the best you can for your children. And so, in owning a business, and you've shared some of these mistakes along the way, have you found that they helped you be smarter each business or each potential mistake, or you could see things better because of your past learning experiences from those mistakes?
Oh yeah, most definitely, and that's kind of the point. So it's that the mistakes are obviously not positives when they happen, but it's more, how can you rebound?
Right.
And that's what I think, and whatever taught me that. And maybe it's from, I don't know, maybe it's from being an only child and not having the brother or sister to blame, take credit for, partner with, team up with. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it's just, I guess this all taught me to be that way and think okay, what can I do to get out of this situation? How can I make it, come out on top? So it's kind of the, if you strike out when you're trying to hit a home run, then next time try to do something other than hitting the home run that at least gets you on base, to use another sports analogy. But,
Yeah.
that's a way to look at it. And it's been that way. And so um, it's even at the point where literally 3 weeks after I had moved out from my first wife on the way to a divorce that I met the woman that is now wife number two, and we've been together
Oh,
15 years. 3 weeks
wow.
later, because as aggravating and, the emotional state as things were, I wanted to be married. I wanted there to be a Mrs. Kohl. And so, no matter what the circumstances, and not to say I wasn't trying, but I was making the effort to find the next Mrs. Cole. Actually happened at a uh, nothing to do with business mistakes, but it's the lesson. So
Yeah.
I actually uh, got one as a prize thing ticket to a charity event for singles that was over an hour away from where I lived. And my
Okay.
thinking was, okay, I haven't been out on a date in, 7 years. I was with the first wife. We were married 5 years. That's how much how long I gave it. Thinking, okay, first time out there, it's over an hour away. Great practice run. Go out there, make a few approaches, see what's going on, go back, look at the films, analyze what could I do better, and just being analytical, see what happens. And my expectations or my hopes were exceeded. I not only came away with a phone number, but we went out the next week, and it's just been, in fact, during the first date, we'd already planned our second date, and that never happens. And now we're together, 15 years. And so there's a lot of people, and I understand that say, hey, I'm going through a divorce. This was miserable, saying, I'm not dating. I don't want to ever get married again. I don't. And that's fine. I'm not here to say to do or not to do. But my thing was, I stayed probably longer than I should have in the first one because of wanting to get, to be married and have it work, almost like the I want to keep this job and
Hmm.
relating it that way. And got a better result than I had planned for, but it was also from making the effort and looking at it of, knowing that the we were actually going together over 3 years before I proposed, just to make sure that things that went wrong with the first one wouldn't go wrong. And that too is a learning experience. So it's kind of the, yeah, bad things are going to happen and you're going to make mistakes. But to me, it's what you do with them.
Oh, absolutely. And Dave, you're absolutely right, because the stories and the lessons apply, in my opinion, whether it's business or personal life. And I think a lot of it all lays around fear. Like, we're afraid to make a mistake, or if we make a mistake, we're afraid to admit it. I'm a business owner, I can't be wrong. Or fear to make a change for what we know might be right. Like, to me, it all revolves around fear. And so I'm curious on your take on the topic of fear. Like, when perhaps in your past business ventures have you experienced fear, and how do you get over that? Because I talk to a lot of candidates who want to own a business. They have this dream, but somehow fear is holding them back. And I know you've overcome that.
Yeah, I think it's the uh, to answer it with a question it's the did you do your best
Ooh,
theory.
okay.
And so it's kind of the, okay, if I make, I go in or do a business proposal, which isn't necessarily starting or running a business, but, let's say you're hiring for, a market research person, and I'm one of, 3 companies that you've asked to bid on it. So I come in and I say, hey, here's what I've done. Here's what I can do for you. Here's my background. Here's my information. As long as I've done my best, it's kind of if I get it, I get it. I don't know who I'm competing against. If not, I at least feel like I did my best, and try not to have that, I'm on the way back to my office after delivering the presentation going, I forgot the Jones account. And
Uh-huh.
so it's all that, detail oriented and what I call being over prepared and making the most of those presentations. So one of my light bulb moments was actually, again, many years ago. I had a couple of buddies working for a small manufacturing plant, and we're just, having lunch one day, talking about the football games or whatever it might be. And the one guy goes, "Oh, Dave, we got asked to uh, bid on our products. A larger manufacturer might want to buy them. We're going to be doing a bidding presentation in a couple weeks. What do I do? I'm not a public speaker and all that." And so we start talking, and the next thing we know, they hired me to go in and do their presentation. So we get there that day, and I had to learn about, springs and all these like auto parts and stuff that, still doesn't do me any good, but it did that day. And we're going in, and this was again in the days of, in-person presentations. And I guess the company that was another of the companies invited had presented right before us. So we're coming in, they're going out, and I see like their storyboard, and I'm like, well, this is going to be a tough act to follow.
Mm-hmm.
But, we're prepared. I went in, did our presentation, did my best, talked about it in the 3 minutes or whatever amount of time we had, answered a couple of questions on their behalf. And, we're on the way back thinking, hey, that went well. That was, best we could do. Let's see what happens. A couple days later, phone rings. Dave, we got the bid. And I'm like, that's fantastic. Way to go. And the guy says, he said, so I actually asked what was it that made you select our company? And the
Yeah.
guy said, your presentation was far and away the best. And so that stuck with me. And so back to the question on the fear
Yeah.
is I've somehow twisted it around in my mind that my fear is not having everything that I need to make that presentation a success, rather than the fear of losing the presentation.
Yeah, you came in not knowing anything about the industry or the products, and
Right.
you went in and nailed it.
Yeah, and a million lessons out of that, which is that, sometimes you don't have to have the best product or service. It's in how you present it. And that has also stuck with me. And it's these things from years ago that are still with me today. And I guess that's another big part of the message.
Absolutely. You have so many life and business lessons. What do you think, what would you say is your biggest takeaway in looking back in your little time machine, right? What have these business and life lessons taught you that you're kind of incorporating now in your life?
Um, Being over prepared
Oh,
for everything. And so, or the need, or how much of a benefit that it is. So being able to talk about something and understand how to put presentations together and what's needed, and making sure you think of everything. So I have the laboratory, the drawing board, literally, where I will, I'll try to come up with, okay, 10 reasons why I should leave the door open to let fresh air in. And I'll try to come up with them, just because it's that habit of having more reasons than I need. Okay, which are the most important? Let's rank them.
yeah.
And I might practice, talking about 7 of them when I'm only going to give 3 reasons. That's part of what I do, in my coaching with people, to prepare like you need to talk about a lot more than you really do. So that, okay, now you've talked about 3 out of the 7, but they're the best 3 and why. And if and as you're asked questions, you're given more time, whatever the case might be, you can comfortably talk about other reasons to do or to have whatever it is. So it's kind of a training thing. And in the coaching and consulting and research that I do, mainly for real estate people, but some for small business owners. That's a part of it. What can we bring out about what you're doing, what you have to offer? How to make sure you're not just reading a script that, 10 other people could be reading, and put yourself into the equation, your experiences. Why should I hire you? It's not just hiring a contractor to paint the ceiling. It's why should I hire you to paint the ceiling, and just bringing that out and having more reasons than you're going to use in your presentation. So that's the hard-earned learned lesson.
That in itself, Dave, is super powerful, because kind of looping it into your analogy of sports talk, the
Mm-hmm.
more options or the more chances you have at base, that
Mm-hmm.
the more chances of a home
Yeah.
run or making it
Yep.
home and winning the game. And so I think what happens is, a lot of times business owners, they're very tunnel vision, right? They think they know what they know, and they're not necessarily open to other ideas. And so they'll be like, oh, there's just this one way to do it. But you're saying lay out options, right? And not that you
Right.
have to do all of them, but this way you'll pick the best 3 out of the 10 in your arsenal, and you're going to be more likely to score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's how you look at it. And so, doing a lot of what I do is real estate related. And so, for example, of somebody that comes, oh, yeah, I want to use this property for a short-term rental, where you rent it out 3 weekends a month and, that type of thing. And that's fine. But there's times when I'll say, okay, but what about making it a long-term rental? Now, if it's a long-term rental and it's leased for 6 months or a year, you don't have to worry about what about the third week in October? Do I have to advertise more on the slow season? You
Mhm.
just know what you've got. So it's kind of like the risk versus reward, and just bringing things like that. But then there are people that think, hey, what I do, I've made my money in short-term rentals. So that, it's kind of trying to knock down the why would I try it another way when this has worked barrier, when there may be a very valid reason to do that. Circumstances around you change, the market changes. There's more competition. Now there's AI, which some people are competing against and others are embracing, and there's no wrong answer for that either. So it's just kind of, I guess instead of looking at it as, opening up more options, it's almost more like considering everything. Yeah, I'm doing it in red, but what if I did it in blue or green? Would it be better? Could it be better? How could it be better? What's my competition doing? And things like monitoring the competitors to know what they're doing, try to learn their sales process, what's difficult about trying to do business with them. If they're open till 8 o'clock, maybe you stay open till 9 o'clock those nights, just looking at, always the what are my options and not get content.
Well, Dave, because you have so much experience, I would call it wisdom. And it seems today you're taking your wisdom and using it to help others. So today, what are you doing today? You're coaching those who want to get into real estate. Help our audience understand what you do and who you
Okay.
are.
Yeah, part of it, and it's a number of things, but I do, and I'm looking to expand on doing coaching and consulting. So I actually have a real estate investor group that does training, or I'm part of a real estate group that does paid training, and they have video and courses and events and online things. And part of it is then you take what you learn and they put you with a coach one-on-one to go over how can you apply it to your situation. And I do that for them. And then I've gotten some clients on my own where it may be a one time, it may be continuous of kind of coaching. Okay, you've got a presentation to make for people to buy into your property investment or whatever the case might be. Okay, what do you offer? Let's bring up your investment experience, your knowledge, and then why is this property a good opportunity to fix it so that, okay, they may not buy that property, but they're interested in what you have to say in the future. So it's really working with people. And also initially, I was in radio broadcasting, so I know if you've got to do a 45-second report at 3:17 this afternoon, it's ready by then, it's on time, and I can talk about it again and do it differently an hour later. That's my training. And so I also help with public speaking training and putting presentations together. I do it a lot for real estate, but that's also for small business owners as well, for making decisions, evaluating, putting those proposals together, and, forming your team and hiring or working with people that have other specialties so that they're complementing you instead of fighting you. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. And so it could be done either at the what I call the corporate level, where I could do it for groups and then meet with people individually, or do it for the business owners and the, starting real estate investors and even brokers and things, where I help with campaigns and strategies and how to present themselves and their properties.
Wow. Well, Dave, clearly sleep is optional for you. You're doing a
Mhm.
lot of things. And today's topic was about mistakes and the lessons that you've learned from them. So in closing out today's episode, what message do you want to get across to people about mistakes and or lessons learned?
Be over prepared and double check everything. Consider any and all options.
Those are good parting words. So, one last question for you, Dave. Since the name of today's podcast is What's Your Next? And you are very entrepreneurial, doing a lot of things. So, Dave, what's your next?
All right. Next is that I do want to expand on the coaching and consulting and be able to do more. I'm calling them corporate gigs, but more the small business, where maybe there's partners, there's managers, there's salespeople, of being able to help with their, you know, public speaking, their presentations, proposals, and, growing ways to grow their business, doing the what ifs. Hey, who handles your research? We don't have a research person. Oh, really? Then how do you expand? We're not looking to expand. What? With you have this and that going, that type of thing. So just kind of looking to expand on that, and probably more into the small business avenue in addition to or instead of real estate. Some days it's kind of nice to be doing things that don't depend on whether or not a transaction comes through or the buyer backs out.
Wow. Well, Dave, you have so much going on and you have provided so much wealth to the audience today. I know people are like, come on, Stacy, get his contact information on here so I can reach out. Dave, how can people get in touch with you?
Okay, best is probably, email dave@firstin.com.
Okay.
We have the firstin.com website, and also realestatemediacoach.com, which gets into more about the coaching, and it doesn't have to just be for real estate, as we've said. And you can obviously contact me through that.
Okay. Wonderful. Dave, thank you for joining me and my audience today, kind of sharing your journey, all these businesses and lessons learned and the mistakes, peeling back the curtain and being so open and transparent. And more importantly, the lessons you've learned, right? And how you've transformed that into new businesses and ways in helping others. And that's a message we can all learn from today. So thank you,
That we,
everyone, for joining us. Get in touch with Dave, learn more about the services and solutions he can help you with, and we'll see you on the next episode of What's Your Next. Bye-bye.